something, or I watched this video. Has anybody ever seen this interview? There was this interview with a guy who was a black FBI informant, and he basically spilled the beans on pretty much everything that the FBI had tried to do or was doing as it pertained to stopping black people. And this interview is really fascinating. I think the guy felt some guilt. Um, I think he felt kind of bad about what he was doing, and so effectively, I thought I processed the video. I didn't watch the whole thing yet. I want to go back and watch it, but it really made me sort of think about how deeply we need to process just how much has been placed or put in place to slow us down, right? To slow down our progress. And the most interesting thing about this conversation with the FBI informant that really got my attention was how much he talked about culture and how much he really talked about the fact that they would study black culture. They would drill deep into black culture. They would he said that some of the FBI agents understood black culture better than his black friends understood black culture. They could recite all the key words and all the terminology to you. They understood, and he talked about the music. He talked about the music. And he said that, and they said, well, why would they said you studied the music? And he said, yeah, because the music is the key to the culture. And I want you to really put that against the backdrop. And his black friends understood. I want you to put that against the backdrop of how many people in our community don't even believe that the music affects the culture. Who think it's just entertainment and it's just music, and that you're overreacting. That the music isn't a big deal. That the music isn't the reason that things are happening the way that they're happening. So ultimately, it was really interesting to hear this guy talk, and what it really explained to me was that we have to understand just how much has been stacked against us and how hard people work to make sure that we don't make any progress. And the other thing I will tell you is, if you think that they've stopped doing this, if you think that they've just sort of quit doing these things, I think you got another thing coming. I think you're dead wrong. I think that they're just doing these things more covertly. I think they're doing these things in a more sophisticated manner. They have more surveillance tools than they have ever had before. They have artificial intelligence now that can allow them to do things that weren't possible before. And I don't think it's just being done by your government. I think it's being done by governments of other countries. I think there are other countries that use legitimate issues and racial tension between whites and blacks as a pathway to ultimately destroy America because they know that America is weaker when everybody's fighting. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to just sort of bring to your attention is what I was seeing, what I was sort of thinking, what I was observing, in terms of just how hard certain entities are working to make sure that you are in a constant state of confusion and also backward progress. And in fact, I literally wrote it down. I come up with these theories on the fly. I was in the shower, and I like to write things down so I can be clear about my thoughts. Because I'm an ADHD kid, so I gotta really focus and meditate on an idea, so I can express it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm going all over the place. Because my brain will just be I'll be thinking about it from different angles. So what I did was in the shower, I wrote down some acronyms or some letters to help us remember this. And so I think that one of the things you have to process, and we're going to read from Powernomics in a minute. Dr. Claude Anderson, who's the GOAT. By the way, the video's on YouTube if you want to look it up. If you look up, FBI informant infiltrates black community or something like that, it's a long interview, and he really goes into detail. He really goes into detail. For example, he tells a story about a group of black poets. There was a black poetry society that he was supposed to infiltrate. And what he did was he said, "Yeah, my assignment was to burn down the theater that they were performing in." And they said, "Well, why would you burn down a theater with black poets?" He said, "Because they were in line to get a grant." And he said, "If there is no theater, then there is no grant." He said, "Well, how did you do it?" He said, a couple of jugs of kerosene, some gasoline. He said, I used a blowtorch and set it on fire. And they said nothing more sophisticated. He said, no, you don't want to do it sophisticated. He said he said you wanted to look unsophisticated. You wanted to look like somebody from the neighborhood just got mad and go because he got kicked out of the theater and decided to burn it down. So it makes you really think about how many other incidents, thousands of other incidents have occurred that looked like it was just black on black ridiculousness, just craziness, foolishness, whatever, when really there was an outside hand at play. How many drive-bys have happened on the south side of Chicago where they simply made it look like it was just some black teenagers deciding to shoot it out when really there was another hand in that process? And one of the things I thought about too, and this actually affects my life in real time, is I thought about the fact that I keep distance. I keep my distance from a lot of strangers, especially people that really want to get super close to me and really want to know everything I got going on, ask a million questions, because I said, if they're going to infiltrate a group of black poets, what do you think they're going to try to do when you're actually making real progress and coming up with real solutions for the black community? I know for a fact that we have helped over 10 million people in the Black Business School invest for the first time. I know for a fact that we changed the culture. I know a lot of rappers now that are friends of mine that are rapping about economics and whatnot, and they started doing this stuff because of us. There are now financial influencers, big name financial influencers who say, you were the first person I ever saw doing this, and I took your notes. I followed what you did. So it really reminded me personally to say, be careful, right? And it also made me get my insurance policy. My insurance policy, in case you want to know, my insurance policy is you. My insurance policy is that if I talk to as many of you as I possibly can and hopefully persuade as many of you as possible to embrace at least a fraction of the ideas that we talk about on this platform, then it doesn't matter if they take me down. It doesn't matter if they pop a scandal on me or somebody tells you I committed suicide with a heroin needle in my arm in the bathtub. That's okay. It's going to continue. The movement is going to continue. Why? Well, because we've got the application of a very simple investment concept, which is diversification. One of the things that you have to do to protect something, to protect an asset that is valuable, and this movement, this black economic this black economic intelligence movement, this black economic power movement that's occurring in this generation is a $1 trillion asset for our community. It's a $1 trillion baby. We're just in the beginnings of it. And what's going to happen, the reason I call it a $1 trillion baby is because in about 50 years, when your kids are raised in this culture, when your grandkids are raised in this culture, you're going to see them making billion-dollar moves, trillion-dollar moves that we can't even fathom. You're going to see them doing things we can't fathom. Why do I know this? Well, because I study the history of great institutions. When I went to Harvard University to visit my friend, the rapper D1, I literally studied the history of Harvard. I was not there looking for a job. I was not hoping that one day they would hire me. I don't want to ever work at Harvard. I said, I want to build a Harvard. And so I studied John Harvard in his life and how John Harvard created this great institution that was great 300 or 400 years later. And one thing I learned is that to build something great, it takes patience. It takes patience and a commitment to a multi-generational strategy where you're not going to see all the final results. The people that started Harvard University in 1631 or whatever year it was, they didn't live to see the greatness of Harvard. It was 4, 5, 6 generations down before Harvard really became the powerhouse that it is now. So a lot of this, the results of what we're doing, we're not going to see it, but we have to plant those seeds. We got to plant. And I guarantee you it's going to make a difference. Okay, 1636. Thank you, Melvin. Melvin corrected me. He must have went to Harvard. Just look at Melvin, just trying to be smart and stuff. All right. Anyway, let me sort of share with you a few things that I noticed that they tend to do with black people in order to keep us lost and confused, to keep our wealth dropping to zero, because a lot of you know about the studies that say that black wealth is headed down. Black wealth is not going up. Integration did not improve your wealth. It actually killed it. It's going to be at zero by the year 2053. A couple things that they do to us is they keep us subservient. If you're serving another master, then you cannot serve yourself. You understand what I'm saying? If you're serving another master, you cannot serve yourself. If you're serving white folks, then you cannot be serving black folks 9 times out of 10. If you're taking care of somebody else's kids, you can't be taking care of your own. It's hard to do, right? So effectively, we are an important vehicle for the progress and the success of America. When we were talking about the real history of Juneteenth the other day, one of the things that I mentioned to you, Dr. Claude Anderson, we had a meeting and he was telling me about Juneteenth and kind of sharing the message. He's a little under the weather, so I offer to speak on his behalf whenever he has something to say. And one of the things that he said was that they were hesitant to let the slaves go free because they needed that labor. They couldn't just let all their unpaid employees go, just like the NCAA. But they didn't want to pay the athletes because they needed the money. There was an entitlement issue. They felt entitled to those resources. So effectively, the NCAA didn't want to let their athletes get paid, not because they were just trying to be evil, but because they said, well, wait a minute, who's going to replace all this money? The same thing happened in Juneteenth. They said, wait, if we let all these people go, who's going to plow the fields? Who's going to do the work? And so effectively, this subservience is something that continues in our tradition. I think that they keep us subservient in order to keep us from serving ourselves and building our own community. And this is indoctrinated into you from the time you're born. They keep us very confused. When you think about what that FBI agent was talking about, one thing that he did, and I give respect and credit to Anthony Browder. Anthony Browder, who I met on, I only had one long conversation with him, but I want to talk to him again because I just love this guy. And he was telling me, he was warning me. He said in the 1970s, we did not know what the FBI was doing to us. He said one of the things that they do is they create confusion. One of the things that they do to keep you from making progress or to keep your movement from going or to kill whatever you're working on is they just make it so confusing that nobody knows who to listen to, right? And so that means, for example, if I believe in that guy over there and then someone says, well, he's a rapist, well, then I'm going to say, well, gosh, I don't know who to believe in because everybody's a criminal, right? So one of the things he talked about is just creating chaos and confusion. So I keep my eye out for anybody, especially people on the internet who might look like us, who just create nothing but chaos, almost like the Joker in Batman. The Joker didn't really have a specific objective other than to watch everything burn down, right? So when you see the Joker, when you see these Jokers out here, I call them Negro naysayers, just crazy people, just acting a fool, yelling, screaming, cussing at people, attacking people for no reason. To me, that reminds me of what Anthony Browder said. Their job is not to necessarily structure anything or develop anything. Their goal is just to create chaos. And you don't know why they've been given that role. A lot of ex-convicts who know black culture very well are forced to become FBI informants. Al Sharpton was revealed to be an FBI informant. Now, does this mean he doesn't care about black people? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into it with Sharpton. But if you go look it up and Google it, you will see that they basically had to place him as an informant, or they didn't have to, but they did because they caught him in the middle of a drug deal. This is all documented. This is not me being nasty or whatever or speculative. This is all out there, right? And so effectively, one of the things that I think about is I think, well, how many other black people who are in trouble with the law or who have tax problems or whatever have been forced to become informants and to use their position or their influence in the black community on behalf of some entity that simply is seeking to control you. That's one of the reasons why I say to you that I think your leadership has to be decentralized. I don't believe so much in this whole idea of black leadership, at least not in its traditional form. This idea that there's one Superman that we all look up to, or one, head honcho, or one HNIC that we all sort of bow to. No, I don't think you should go with that model. I think the leader in your house needs to be you, because only you know what's best for your family. Only you know what's best for your household. My job as an advisor is to ask you, I'm literally asking you to consider certain ideas that you may apply as you run the kingdom in your house, as you run the empire called your life. Okay. So the other thing that I think that these outside entities do, based on this conversation on which is on YouTube with this FBI informant, is I think that there's always a consistent effort to keep black people just very ignorant. I think that making someone ignorant isn't just about keeping them from getting the information. You see, a person who that you try to block from having access to information isn't going to remain ignorant if they're determined to get the knowledge. If they're determined to get knowledge and information, they can go find it. They're going to research it. They're going to go open books. They're going to go to the library. They're going to find it. The better goal is not so much to try to block them from accessing the information. The better objective, the more effective way to get that done is to somehow create a culture or put it in their head that information is not important, that knowledge is not valuable, to create sort of an anti-intellectual culture and disposition that will make them so lazy intellectually that even if you put the knowledge right in front of them, they're still going to ignore it. And so effectively, from the time our kids are born, there's a hugely massive anti-intellectual culture that's out there. People that talk a lot. I remember going on to a radio show in Chicago. It was the biggest urban radio station in Chicago. I think it was WGCI. Anyway, I went on that station, and I'll never forget that I was talking about something, and I said the term cerebral cortex, and how the cerebral cortex is the front part of your brain that is responsible for structured logical thinking, and how too much entertainment weakens your cerebral cortex. I explained it all. You know how I am. If I use a complex term, I'll instantly break it down so that even a 6-year-old can understand it. But I remember there was a comedian, because remember I told you all how America loves black men when we show up as comedians, athletes, or rappers, right? And so this comedian says, he's like, whoa, come on, Doc, you talking over everybody's head, man. You talking over everybody's head. And I remember just thinking, what am I supposed to just tell everybody a joke? Is that what y'all just kind of want to do all the time? Or do we have any serious issues that we got to address? Because entertainment does weaken the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, disciplined thinking, delayed gratification, all the things that separate you from an animal is up here in that prefrontal cortex. So what happens, the frontal lobe, thank you, AC Salam. See, I'm not an expert on the brain, by the way. My wife knows a lot more than I do. But really, I remember reading this and I said, this is so interesting. So if you train me to be intellectually lazy, then I'm going to be easy to trick. I'm going to be easy to fool every time. I'm going to be the biggest sucker on the block because I'm not even going to sit. It's like trying to outsmart a dope fiend or outsmart an alcoholic. It's easy to outsmart a dope fiend. He's too high to really process anything that you're saying anyway. So he's not going to get anything that you're saying, right? So effectively, that a culture of ignorance where ignorant people get glorified and elevated to the top of society and people look up to ignorant people. And then you have smart kids. How many of y'all seen this? Give me a yes or no if you've seen this. How many of you have seen a kid who was really smart, but they pretended to be dumb just so they could fit in? Has anybody ever seen that? How has anybody? Give me a yes if you've seen that. I see it a lot. I see it all the time. You know, and back in the days, they used to say, "Oh, you acting white." Now I don't know if they say that as much anymore. I think they still say that, but a lot of times they will make that intelligent, genius child feel guilty for being intelligent. So then they'll dumb themselves down. They won't try to get smarter. They won't show how smart they are. And the remedy for that is really knowledge of self. I think that if you give your child knowledge of self and confidence, then they'll be smart and they won't be ashamed of it. And I can say that this is what helps me get through. Like, that's why I ignored and laughed at the guy at WGCI who told me that I was being too smart. And I said, well, what, you want me to be stupid? Like, I don't want to be dumb. I don't want to be dumb like you. Like, you're a comedian, you're a joke. So I'm serious, you're a joke. So why don't you go over and tell jokes and the grown men will be over here talking? But that required me to be in my 40s to say that, right? What really would be better is if your child can say that at the age of 10. Because a lot of Black intelligence gets heavily underdeveloped because intelligence is like a muscle, so potential will not carry you very far. You have to work that potential. It's just like a financial asset. The financial asset is not valuable. It does not generate cash flow in itself 9 times out of 10. You got to work it. If somebody gives you $1 million worth of farmland and you do nothing with that farmland, then that is a bad investment. If you buy a $10 million company that's supposed to generate $1 million in revenue and you're not working and you don't have employees and you don't have those factories moving, then that asset loses its value. So your intelligence, your natural intellect that God gave you is something you got to work it, man. You got to work it every day. You got to stretch that brain. You got to take that 10-year-old kid who shows intelligence at an early age, and you got to put them constantly in situations where they're going to be forced to stretch. That's how you become great. That's how you become good at something. It is never appropriate to brag about how naturally gifted you are at something if you wasted that gift. It is not appropriate to brag about how good you could have been if you had just put in the work. That is almost damn near sacrilegious. That's disrespecting God, if you ask me. I'm not even a religious person, but I feel like you're disrespecting God because He gave you that gift so you could work it. That was your opportunity. That was your chance, and you blew it. And now you're sitting around talking about how great you could have been, but you didn't. You just didn't feel like trying. Well, that's kind of embarrassing. Don't say that. Either do it or just be quiet about it. Wasted potential is almost as bad as if you were never given the gift in the first place. There's a lot of wasted intellectual potential in our community from children who could have been geniuses. They could have went to college at the age of 12. Some of them could have went on and become, doctors, lawyers, scientists, and professors, but instead they became something else because they wanted to fit in with stupid people. Next thing that I noticed, and this FBI informant video, which again is on YouTube. I don't know the name of the guy. I got to go find it. Just search, if you search for FBI informant black community or something like that on YouTube, you'll find it. Another thing that made me think about is how they work very hard to keep you distracted. I think things like entertainment distract you. I think that worrying about what white folks think distracts you. I think that focusing on things that are worthless distracts you. Thank you. Natalie put the information right there in the chat on the Zoom. By the way, if anybody wants to join us in the book club on the Zoom, if you're listening outside of the Zoom, all you got to do, the book club is free. We meet every Wednesday. We read Powernomics. You can go to blackkeystogreatness.com. That's blackkeystogreatness.com. It's free, and you can also join my life class, totally free. This is a service we offer in the Black Business School for anybody that wants to understand Powernomics. We've been doing this for 2-3 years. If you want to get recordings of all the lectures that we've done in the weekly trainings, just go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. All right, so distraction is big. If you're distracted, then you can't focus. And so ultimately, I would say to you that if you want to be great or strong at anything, you have to pick the things that matter to you and really focus. This is really true in a digital age. In a digital age, there's distractions everywhere. Your phone is beeping and buzzing, and you get notifications. People are calling you that have nothing interesting or meaningful to say. People want to pull you into their drama and all that stuff. If you want to be successful, find some way to be focused. The way I stay focused is, number one, I keep my phone off at all times. I don't hear any beeping, buzzing, dinging, anything that's gonna ignite my ADHD. I turn it all off. Number two, what I do is every year I pick the 5 things in my life that matter to me the most. What are the 5 things in my life that are important to me? Doing this work that I do with you all, very important. My family, very important. Fitness, exercise, very important. And there's a couple other things on the list. Well, if you don't fit in those 5 things, then it's going to be very, very hard to catch up with me. It's going to be very, very hard to get me to spend any time on anything that goes outside of that universe of 5 that matters to me. Why is that? Well, because I know I've only got so much energy. And one thing I know I cannot do is do everything at the same level. I cannot do every single thing I want to do, or I cannot do every single thing everyone wants me to do, or be everywhere everybody wants me to be. So I have to prioritize. So I pick those 5 things, and that's where I live. That's it. So distractions, I think, are a terrible thing. I think that throws us off a lot. Also, another thing that this FBI informant conversation reminded me of, in terms of the dirty tricks they do to our people, is that they work to keep us divided. I think the division starts at a microscopic level. Not only are you just divided, let's start the big picture, right? The big picture, you've got division in terms of things like black on black crime, which I do believe is a real thing, but you can disagree. It's okay. Democrat, Republican stuff. I think that's a source of division. Male versus female. There is a gender war. I think that's a big one. And then you go to another tier and you talk about the division just with families. If you want to kill black wealth, just kill the black family. That's what they did, and you see what it's done to black economics. A lot of single mothers are out here struggling financially because for whatever reason the family isn't together, and then there's a lot of single fathers that are also struggling financially, chasing women and paying child support and all that stuff. And then the children are the ones who are hurt the most. Your children get traumatized because the adults that they love them are not even getting along, not even making an effort to resolve their differences, because everybody is about me, 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 me. That's a culture, that so-called rugged individualism, where you put your needs, your feelings, your hopes, your desires, your wants above the group. That's a culture. Not every culture operates that way. But even deeper than that, I think we're even divided from ourselves. I don't believe that most of us as Black people really live the truest, most authentic life that we really deserve to live. I don't think that we really say what we want to say, do what we want to do, or are who we really want to be. I think that a lot of that division is driven by a couple of factors. One is could just be self-esteem. If you don't know, or actually a lack of knowledge of self, which is connected to self-esteem. So if I don't know who I am, and I'm really this guy over here, but I'm pretending to be that guy, like I'm really a strong Black man, but actually I learned to be sort of a docile white guy with brown skin. Well, then that right there is an internal split that's going to be challenging for me. I understand this because this is what I went through. I went through the code switching nonsense that a lot of us are trained to do as a kid. So I was divided from myself, and then there's like that next level of not just self-awareness, knowing who you are, but also accepting who you are and loving who you are. And so that lack of self-knowledge, that lack of self-acceptance creates that division where most of us don't reach our potential because we're not being who we're supposed to be. Let me give an example that was kind of like related to sports. This is an analogy. My whole life in high school, I spent time in the wrong sport. All I did was I was a track athlete. I was captain of the track team. I was the hardest working kid on the team. That's why I was a captain. I wasn't the fastest, but I was pretty fast. But I wasn't fast enough to be as great as I wanted to be. I wanted to be, I wanted to be in the Olympics, and I did not have that. I did not know how much genetics plays a role in how fast you can run. So I spent all this time at track practice, just doing all this work, working to be a track athlete. And I was always sad. I was always disappointed because I never reached my goals. I never ran as fast as I really believed I could run or that I wanted to run. And so effectively, what happened after that was I got older, and part of it, the benefit of that frustration was I applied everything I learned from sports, and that's how I did well academically in college. Like literally, the reason I made straight A's in college pretty much was because I had spent so much time being frustrated and working super hard at track. And in track, I worked hard and got no results. In college, I worked hard and got really good results. So that inspired me to keep going and going and going. So I was just kind of an insane student. I literally would take more classes than everybody else. I had the highest grade point average. I was just a maniac about it because I was obsessed with being successful at something, because it was the first time in my life I'd ever succeeded really at anything on a consistent basis. But then the thing I realized looking back at that was I was in the wrong sport. I look back and I said the reason I was frustrated as an athlete was because nobody had exposed me to all the other sports I could have been great at. Like, imagine if I had taken that same work ethic, that same intensity, that same commitment, and instead of doing track and field, I had played golf. I think I would have been a great golfer because golf is more intellectual. It's about repetition, things like that. I could do those things. Or what if I had said I want to be a world champion chess player? If I had done that, then that would have got there. Or what if I'd said I want to be, I don't know, really great at baseball, even baseball. I think I would have been better at baseball. My biological father was a good baseball player. He wasn't around, so nobody taught me how to play. So I'd see the ball coming at not 85, 80 miles an hour, and I was thinking, I don't know how somebody can hit that thing. So long story short, that is an example. That's an analogy that I think of when we talk about going through life as a Black man or Black woman. A lot of times you don't succeed at what you're doing because you're playing the wrong sport. You should be playing the Black power sport, but instead you're playing the I want to be a white man sport. You should be maybe an independent entrepreneur, but instead you're trying to climb the corporate ladder and finding out that they're not letting you climb as high as you think you deserve. You should be over here, being a great husband and father or whatever it is you're supposed to be, but instead you're trying to be a player and you're trying to fit in with a bunch of idiots that want to go out and get a bunch of girls pregnant, and it's not making you happy, right? You should be a loving wife and mother with beautiful children, but instead you want to be a city girl because some rapper told you that being a hoe was profitable, that run around and being a so-called independent woman with a bunch of random dudes sleeping in your bed, that somehow that's empowering, but for whatever reason you feel like it's not, and you're like, well, maybe I got some bad advice. So a lot of times I'm not telling you what to do or who to be. What I'm saying is find yourself, commit to that person and be confident enough to just be that person and leave it at that. You know, I can't, I don't have any problem with anybody who ever fails, but one of the things I would challenge you on is at least be consistent. You'll be at least be consistent with who you are, whether you're a good person, bad person, whatever it is, tall, short, smart, dumb, well, just be consistent. Just pick your strategy, stay with it, and love that. You know, as long as you know that that's what works for you. Okay. So anyway, now one thing that's really funny is I think somebody said something about there's apparently there's a guy I don't know. This is the second time I've seen this, but somebody said in the chat that there was a guy named Corey Holcomb who apparently has an issue with me for whatever reason. I don't know. I met Corey one time. I didn't think he was that smart, but anyway, I'm going to just sort of use that as an example of what I'm referring to earlier. You know, the reason I don't respond to that is because number one, in 2017, I told you guys way back then, 6 years ago, I said, I'm not interested in fighting black people. I'm just not going to do it. I've had people do videos and attack and say terrible things that some of these videos will get 80,000 views. I don't even watch them. I've never watched any of them. In fact, one famous NBA player literally had an obsession with me and was saying a lot of things about me for a long time. This is an example of what I talk about when I say being focused. Being focused, that's it. You got to focus. Do your thing. You know, so my mindset is if somebody hates it, if somebody doesn't like what I'm doing, that's okay. I don't care. I'm going to focus on doing what I'm doing. That's it. I'm going to focus on doing what I'm doing. So if that means I look great doing it, then good. If that means I look crazy and stupid doing it, then that's fine too. If that means somebody loves it, then awesome. Let's build on that. If somebody hates it, okay, keep whatever. Tell me why you hate it, but I'm not going to listen. Right. So the other piece of that too, and I want to make this point is because I did meet the Corey Holcomb guy. I met him one time. I was not. I didn't like him. My energy. I felt bad energy with the guy, and I remember, remember early when I was telling you that comedians, the black man will always be loved as a comedian. And I think comedians' jobs are to be funny and to tell jokes. I'm not really here to be funny because we have serious issues we have to address. Um, so I let the comedians tell jokes because my goal is never to be the clown. My goal is to be the king. Comedians are the clowns. The kings don't listen to the clowns. And that's it. The kings don't, so, and then also if you speak negatively and talk crazy consistently about black women without any sort of logical construct for whatever you're saying, that's not somebody that I want as a friend. That's not a person I can relate to because I can tell you guys that black women are critical to the survival of the black community. And so, again, I know I normally I don't mention names, and I'm only mentioning it because somebody mentioned it in the chat, and it was the second time I saw it. And again, maybe there's something he said, but I'm not going to see it. I'm never going to watch it or anything like that. But I will say at the end of the day, as black people, we got to stay focused. Diane, thank you. I agree with you. We got to stay on our assignment. And that word distraction is a big one because I think that we are consistently distracted by a bunch of silly stuff. Entertainment, a huge distraction for black people. It's a huge, it's something worth talking about. But only reason only time I'll be talking about entertainment is if there's a bigger lesson we can learn that will apply back to our lives and make our lives better. Now, a couple more points, or one more point that I would say that from the FBI agent conversation that I picked up, and we're going to start reading Powernomics next, but I wanted to kind of address some of this as I was thinking about it. Is the last thing that I believe that the authorities or the government has consistently done to black people is to keep you destructive, because if you're destructive, then you can't build a community. If you're destructive with one another, you can't sort of make coalitions, you can't make progress, you can't do all the things that you're supposed to do as a people. You can't build families if men and women hate each other or fighting each other. If black men are fighting each other, killing each other, and all that. So I think that there is an effort to keep black people destructive toward each other and ultimately themselves. I think that's one of the reasons why when this agent was talking about culture, that really hit me because if you know in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk heavily about culture and about sort of about it being clear and strategic about identifying your culture and also being clear about protecting that culture. Because there are people that study your culture and they say, okay, if we do this, black people will do that. If we play this on the radio, black people will do that. one of the reasons that we work so hard to try to create Black-owned media is because media is a powerful tool that can be weaponized for the control of culture. So when Black people are consuming more television than everyone else on earth, then we are effectively allowing others to bastardize our culture and to tell us who we are. So one of the things I would say for sure is uh, turn off the TV. You got to turn off the TV. I don't know what you watch. I'm not telling you what to do. I watch some Netflix or whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. I watch some stuff, but I think in general that mass consumption of culture is one of those things that's used consistently, and I think it's weaponized to control us. For example, you watch Hollywood movies, you see how many agendas they plop into the movies. That's because they've designated themselves to be the teachers and to be the authorities and to have a paternalistic um, a paternalistic authority over who you choose to be. Like their belief is that Black people are ignorant and that it's our job to educate them, almost the way a parent educates a child. I'm not your child, and I think that that's wrong. All right, so anyway, let me keep going. Let me jump in. I'm going to read from Powernomics. Dr. Claude Anderson's website, by the way, is powernomics.com. I hope everybody would. I hope everyone will go and support Dr. Anderson because Dr. Anderson is the GOAT and he's a great man and he deserves your support. So if you want to learn Black history, then just go to powernomics.com. Dr. Claude Anderson has already covered every single thing that our people need to know. We're going to start on page 236. And he was talking about churches and what churches can do to strengthen the Black community. And I like his approach because he didn't speak of the church as if the church is some terrible place where where a bunch of stupid things happen. He talked about the church as a place that is diverse, where good things happen sometimes, but sometimes bad things happen, right? And so so ultimately the question is the Black church an asset or a liability, right? Is that is that what what it depends on what church you're talking about, what church you're going to, right? So I want to make that 100% clear. So let me read some of this to you. Give me 1 second. Hold on, they have got this TV up super loud, so let me go in here and yell at my relatives real quick. Hey, Alicia, why is the TV up so loud? Okay, thank you. I'm back. Sorry for that, everybody. Y'all had to hear me get ghetto with the family real quick. I love them though. They probably turned the TV up because I'm talking so loud. So anyway, all right. So let me go in and read some of this. Okay, so this is page 236. It says action step number 4: teach Black economic prosperity. So one thing that Dr. Claude Anderson says is that if you want your community to prosper, the churches must teach something that relates to Black economic prosperity. I talked to James Wilson, who is actually married to my cousin, and he's a student in the Black Business School. And one thing James is doing right now that I loved is he's teaching his church about stock options. So he took a stock options class that we taught, and he asked me what I thought, and if I was okay with it. I said absolutely. And he showed me where he has got together with his flock and he's going to make sure they are good economically, that they're learning the things they need to know economically. I think that's a great idea because remember, the church is a beautiful place in the sense that it's one place where Black people still aggregate in an extraordinary way. And so, one of the things I would say to you is that, the Black church and those who are leadership in the church or involved in the church should be an important part of the Black economic liberation objective or agenda. All right, so he says here, since Black ministers have long held a monopoly on Black American spirituality, they should use it to economically enhance the quality of life for an impoverished Black America. Black churches have a long history of abetting the conditioning of Blacks to believe that there is something virtuous and noble about being poor, downtrodden, or the impoverished underdog. Biblical scriptures condemn the love of money. It does not condemn money. Did y'all hear that? So biblical scripture does condemn the love of money, but it does not condemn money. Money is very important. When Jews began migrating to this country in the latter part of the 19th century, nearly all of them were poor and impoverished. Their synagogues became the source of group unity. When Jewish children were young, the synagogues and the families taught the value of seeking out and buying from those in their own group. The synagogues taught their families the importance of gaining wealth, religious tithing, understanding and practicing capitalism, building Jewish owned and controlled schools, supporting the family and community, and using wealth to protect their homelands. Today, as a group, Jews are wealthy and politically powerful. So, as a result of using the synagogue as a centerpiece of Jewish economic prosperity, the community was able to benefit extraordinarily. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, this is a great model, right? So, money doesn't have to be evil. I think we understand that. Through preaching and teaching, churches could establish a value within their respective congregations for a moral obligation to acquire sufficient wealth and power to support our families, our church, our race, and ourselves. The parable of the master and the slave in Matthew 20:14 is instructive. The scripture tells the story of a master who gave each of his three slaves a different amount of money before going on a journey. He instructed them to protect his money. When he returned from his trip, he called each slave to report how well he had done with his money. The first two slaves reported that they had sizably increased the original amount that they had been given. The third slave, however, reported that out of fear he had buried his money and failed to produce a profit. The master was furious. He took back what he had given the slave and cast him out. The lesson for Black America is that Blacks should take whatever money or wealth they have been given by God and increase it. If we are to follow biblical responsibilities, we must have wealth. Churches can teach a biblical view of wealth, and it must be used to do what God intended. Expanding the role of Black churches begins with teaching Black America to acquire wealth and power and how to use it appropriately. Poor people cannot help poor people. Let me say that again. Poor people can't really help poor people that much. At least not economically. You can help them in other ways, but you can't help people that don't have a lot of money can't give money to other people. Now you can help in other ways though, right? Remember I told you wealth is not just money. Wealth, it shows up in a lot of forms, but in terms of financial help, how are you going to help other people in your family when you're struggling yourself? How am I going to help you swim when I'm drowning? Right? How am I going to get you out of the water when I'm stuck in the mud myself? So he says the amount of financial support received by the church is directly related to the financial condition of church members. Without it, the ministers cannot raise enough money to keep the church solvent and perform their religious work. In the context of our vertical integration paradigm, Black churches and the cultural gifts they produce, music, songs, and dance, can provide the basis for an alternative economic structure. We can produce and sell Black consumer products within Black America that are primarily designed for Black consumers, but can also be sold to the mainstream consumer. Look at the history of Black music and song. As stated earlier, Blacks have produced a wide range of musical forms from Dixieland and jazz to rhythm and blues and gospel, all of which have popular appeal for centuries. Black music represents an important acculturation of Blackness into the majority society and the world. It illustrates the way Blacks as a group can surge outward and compete in the larger society, while simultaneously retaining our own culture, peoplehood, and Blackness. While Black music can be the base of commercial products to jumpstart a vertical industry, the same thing can happen with other products. So think about this. Imagine if we were mass producing other products outside of just music and entertainment. Like, pause for a minute. I want you to process that. Imagine if every church said our goal is to produce something that we can sell to other people, whether they're in our church, whether they're Black or white or whatever. Imagine if every church said we're going to produce some sort of product. We're going to get on Alibaba and get some products from China and sell those products. We'll start within the congregation. If you understand business, you can do amazing things with this. Amazing things with this. And remember, a church isn't the only place this can be done. Any place where Black people gather in mass, this can be done. Any place where there's more than a few different people gathered together that all have a similar culture and a similar set of beliefs, you pretty much have a church. So when Deion Sanders was at Jackson State University and he had all those Black people together who all had a similar culture, he basically was the pastor of a big mega church. It's just that instead of, talking about Jesus and whatever, they talked about Jackson State football, right? But it was still kind of similar to a church. It was a large collection. It was an aggregation, right? Aggregations are powerful. The collections of people are powerful. This is not me just being nice or me just throwing words out there. This is economic theory. Economic theory explains mathematically how gatherings of large amounts of people creates wealth very naturally. The reason London became the wealthiest city in the Western Hemisphere is for one reason. They had a river called the Thames River where people would gather on the river. And when they gathered, they would trade. They would get together and trade. And all an economy is where people are trading. Gross domestic product, which is a measure of economic strength, is nothing more as the total economic value of all the goods and services that are traded within that group. So if I buy a pair of pants from you for $8, and you buy a watch from me for $12, and then I buy a car from you for $14,000, and then you buy a water bottle from me for $1, then the GDP, the gross domestic product, the state of our economic conditioning, pay attention. Give me a yes if you're following this. This is an economic lesson. Let's be clear and intentional here. The state of our economic condition has improved because we are trading, because we are connecting, because we trust each other, because we're doing business. Because we're doing business. And all doing business is getting together with other people and helping each other out. So the best thing you could say to a cousin, a friend, a person that you just met, a person that you want to like, know, and trust, is to get together and say, how can we do business? How can we trade? How can we help each other out? That's the first question I ask. When I meet people, I have to vet them a little bit and think through things or whatever, see if there's any connection. And then I'll get on the phone. One of my first questions I always ask is, how can we help each other out? That's voice talk, voice speak for saying, how do we help each other have economic value? But you've known these things. You've known this your whole life. When a man gets with a woman and says, hey, you look really pretty. Hey, can I take you out to dinner? What can I do for you, girl? Right? That's what he's doing. He's creating value. It's not economic value, but it's related to economics. He's talking about maybe we can get together and make each other feel good, or maybe we get together and start a family one day. Maybe we get together and produce something, right? Produce an experience, produce some love, produce a family, right? That's how there's no family on this planet. There's no reproduction process that has ever occurred in all throughout human history, for the most part, or 99.9% of the time, where somebody didn't approach somebody and make a trade and say, hey, I like what you got, you like what I got, let's make the magic happen. So really, that term, I use this term in the Black Business School a lot. I use it in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. It's called financial fertility, economic fertility. And the thing about economic fertility is that it is more likely to happen when people are connected than it is when people are apart. If we're apart and we're not connected, then the chances of me and you getting together and hooking up and doing anything together is pretty much slim to none, right? So effectively, a church is a natural breeding ground for various forms of healthy economic fertility. Jackson State with Deion, that's what I was talking about Deion, and I explained this. I said, if Deion had someone around him that really understood economics at a high level, that understood the potential of economic fertility, that person could have gone down to Jackson State and said, okay, Deion, let's figure out how you can make $20 million a year right where you are, where you don't have to go to pasty, crusty, cold-ass Colorado and, join up with their losing football team in order for you to get money, $5 million a year. You stay here, you can get $20 million a year because the fertility is all around you. But so ultimately, what I want to encourage everybody to do is, if you're in any kind of a group, really start thinking about things like this. I mean, so imagine if every church just said, in addition to having the church basketball team and the church, whatever other functions you have, Bible study on Wednesdays, we're going to have economics class. Maybe better yet, even powernomics class. Every Wednesday, every Thursday. Actually, what am I talking about? I'm literally telling them to copy what I'm doing right now. That's what I do. Y'all are my church, and I'm the pastor. I'm the good Reverend, Dr., Bishop, Deacon, Boyce Watkins, and every Wednesday we get together and we have powernomics training, which is pretty much just economic church. It's us getting together and saying, let's understand how economics works so that we can help each other out. So when I say, hey, we got this thing called the All Black National Convention, it costs a couple $100,000 to do it, but I think we can create a win-win. Well, that's us doing business together. That's me saying, hey, now that we know each other, now that you trust me, now that you kind of know what you're going to get, would you consider my proposal to you? Okay. So ultimately, I think every single church in our community that really wants to really have the maximum impact should be doing something like this economically. Jewish people ain't no better than you. Jewish people ain't no better than you, and they do it masterfully. They wrote the blueprint. They do it. And I'm sure there's some African societies as well that you can study in addition to that. So I'm not putting Jewish people on a pedestal, but they're not better than you. Asian people ain't better than you. White people are not better than you. You can do it. So anyway, let me keep going. Let me keep reading here. All right. So, Powernomics, in Powernomics, page 237, this book is at powernomics.com. It's by Dr. Claude Anderson. He also says, he has action step number 5. So actually, let me finish reading. He says, Black music represents an important acculturation of Blackness into the majority of society. It illustrates the way Blacks as a group can surge outward and compete with the larger society while simultaneously retaining our own culture, peoplehood, and Blackness. He says, but if we whiten our churches and our culture, we run the risk of losing a major mechanism for addressing the unique problems, history, and socioeconomic needs of Black people. So basically, he's saying that the fact that Black churches have remained segregated is not a terrible thing, right? So let's keep going. Action step number 5. Operate the church as an educational and instructional center, which connects to the economics. Black churches could serve as community centers for health services, employment opportunities, leadership, and business training, especially for the growing Black underclass who feel abandoned and confused about what its role is in today's society, today's America. Churches should ally with families and schools to share the social burden. This burden falls primarily on the shoulders of the church because nearly all other institutions within Black neighborhoods are dysfunctional, and various levels of government have disavowed any responsibility to aid this segment of the Black community. So basically, they fall apart mainly because they've been effectively abandoned by us. It would be helpful if Black churches would teach to enlighten rather than preach or excite. So instead of just making people jump up and down, where you sit up there and you ain't saying nothing, but because you study neuro-linguistic programming, you know how to get your congregation going crazy, even though literally you haven't said anything. Has anybody ever seen that? When you have a pastor that literally won't be saying nothing, he'll just repeat the same words over and over and over again. You know, you got to get up, you got to get up, and he starts sounding like a rapper, and everybody starts jumping up and down. And I don't know. I mean, maybe there are just some people that really like that. They like to get excited over nothingness. But I personally, I'm more cognitive, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm literally counting the number of different messages that you've shared in the last 30 minutes, and you've literally said absolutely nothing. But again, because pastors are masters at neuro-linguistic programming, they know how to say things with a certain cadence and rhythm that'll make you jump up and down, because basically you're just dancing. You might as well be at a concert. He says that instead of just getting people excited, I mean, that inspiration is important. It's good to feel inspired, but inspiration does not carry you as far as knowledge and discipline. So when you are excited, that's cool, but let's also give you some knowledge and then give you some discipline so that you can keep on going even when you're not excited, even when you're not inspired, even when you're not jumping up and down. You still get up and you do the same thing every day because you also understand how to go beyond just how you feel. You understand what the goal is. You're able to think long-term and strategic. All right, so anyway, so he says it would be helpful if Black churches would teach to enlighten rather than preach to excite. All too often, our Black congregations go to church simply to get excited and to walk away feeling good. So this is a dope. So this is unfortunate. This is just the truth. Some pastors become drug dealers. They just become drug dealers. They're just not dealing with a chemical drug, but they're naturally manipulating the chemicals inside your brain. So they get you come in there, you're feeling depleted. They get you all pumped up, get you excited, get you jumping up and down, so you walk out feeling good. So you're feeling high. That's a service, right? You know, if you go somewhere to get high, then the drug dealer is going to expect compensation. But the question becomes, what's the long-term benefit? And there has to be some sort of long-term benefit. There has to be some sort of follow-up beyond just I'm going to pump you up and make you feel good, and then you'll get drained and depleted all through the week, and then I'm going to pump you back up again. That's not a healthy cycle to be in. To get high, go down, get high again, go down again. That's why a lot of former drug addicts become religion addicts. Has anybody ever seen somebody that used to be on drugs and then now instead of just like going after the dope man, they're just saying praise the Lord in every other sentence? You know, and we're really, to be honest with you, and I'm not trying to be negative about this. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. This is where I get in trouble because I love the Black church. I love the Black church when the Black church does the right thing. But you know what I'm talking about. They pretty much traded one addiction for another addiction. Right? So effectively, I don't want you to just be a dope addict. I want you to be in a position where you truly feel in control of your life. All right. So So he says they need to be knowledgeable. This is about the pastors. He's talking about the pastors. He says that, oh, here we go. He says, all too often, so most blacks need more in their daily lives. They need to be knowledgeable of the skills that would allow them to negotiate the economic and political world outside of the church. Churches could develop educational programs to educate black youth and adults by teaching them economic principles and capitalism from the pulpit and in Sunday schools. Black children should be taught the nature of a capitalist democracy and the role of group economics. Churches can do this in the context of their dogma. In the early years, children ought to be trained to support their own people first. So this is not an economic lesson in the traditional sense. This is not like, high level mathematical finance. This is just values and culture. This is just teaching culture. Values and culture is just to say, Professor James Small talks about this a lot. But values and culture just says, who matters to you? What's your priority? What's the assignment? If you work hard and you're busting your butt, how do you determine whether your work was worthy or not? So if I sit and I don't know, if I am painting the house and I paint the walls really nicely and the walls look beautiful, then I did a good job. I'm going to get paid for that. But what if I said, it doesn't matter what I paint. I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to just paint the grass. I'm going to paint the ceiling. I'm going to paint the light bulbs. I'm going to paint the dog. I'm just going to paint anything, right? And I paint. Imagine if I work just as hard painting anywhere. I'm painting on the TV set. I'm painting on the couch. I'm destroying things with my paint, right? And then I get done and then I say, well, you should pay me, right? Because I worked really hard. I was busting my butt for 12 straight hours. And then the person says, well, first I'm going to ask you, are they going to pay me to do that job? Are they going to pay me or are they going to be disappointed with me? They're going to be very disappointed. They're not going to pay me. They're going to say, this did not help the cause. You did not understand the assignment. Your values were off. Who told you to go and paint the dog? Nobody asked you to paint the dog. So a lot of black folks, we don't understand the assignment. We don't understand the assignment. We will go out here and bust our butts, work our butts off, and be working for the wrong people. We will go out here and claim to be super successful because we got a Grammy, an Oscar, or an Emmy, but literally maybe we got that award because we were literally embarrassing our own community. Or we will go out here and we will do all this stuff that we think is really important, and we'll say, look at how hard I've worked, look at how much I've accomplished, but you really haven't accomplished anything for the people that actually matter. And I put myself in that category. I was busting my butt when I finished my PhD. I was at Syracuse University, and I was busting my butt teaching a bunch of white kids, Asian kids, and Jewish kids how to be economic geniuses. That's what I was doing. So I felt like I was a successful black man. I did. And it wasn't until I realized how little impact my work was actually having that I realized that I didn't quite understand the assignment. And really that's all subjective anyway. I choose to call it God's assignment. I don't think God's assignment for Boyce Watkins was for him to go to be at Syracuse and to teach a bunch of white kids. God's assignment for me was for me to do what I'm doing with you right now. God's assignment for me is to be a husband, to be a father, to do all the things I'm doing that impact the people in my space that matter to me who need it the most. So what I'm saying to you at the end of the day is you got to figure out what the assignment is and commit to that and position yourself where you can still make a living, you can still make your money, you can still have your success, you can still win your awards, but you'll win your awards and get your wealth and be successful by doing work in the right way with the right outcome. Like if I understand the assignment that, look, your job is to come in and paint the walls. Your job is not to paint the dog. It's not to paint the floor. It's not to paint the ceiling. It's not to paint the light bulb. Paint the walls. And then we will pay you because you understood the assignment. Do you understand what I'm saying? So get out here and help your community, help your people, help your family. Support that should be a core value that black people everywhere should be teaching to every single child. What's your objective? Well, if you ain't helping your community, then what you're doing ain't nothing. And just so you know that there's a real actual example of this where this is actually being applied on the broader global theater. The Chinese did this. If you don't, do y'all know the history of China? Do y'all know how pathetic China was 50 years ago? China was the laughingstock of the world. If you went back to 1973 and said, one day China is going to rival the United States as a global economic superpower and military superpower, they would have laughed at you. They would say, "Come on, China is a joke." China was like the world's ghetto. China, they put together, and I told you guys about some of this. That they put together the 100-year plan of global domination, and they're about year 50 of that 100-year plan. And part of that plan was a China first philosophy. So the same way we have a black first philosophy, they had a China first philosophy. Instead of being B1, they were C1. And they told people, they said, we don't care what you're doing for other people. We don't care if you leave China and go and you can win all the awards, you can make all the money, you can have all the success in the world. But if you're not doing it for China, then it doesn't count. That's literally what they said. They said they taught their kids systematically in their educational system. They said, your job is to build the strength of China. That's it. Anything outside of that does not count. So, what I propose to you, what I propose to all intelligent black people that are listening, and all of you are intelligent because you're here and I respect you, is I think we have to be just as committed. I think you tell your kids, look, it's about black folks. You know, take your talent to your community. Period. All right. So let me go. Let me keep going here. Um, and by the way, I saw some of you were asking about the All Black National Convention. That's going to be October 20th in Atlanta, Georgia. If you go to allblacknationalconvention.com, you can get information there. There's also some stuff, there's some free resources at my website, boycewatkins.com. There's financial flashcards for kids. If you have kids and they're looking for something to do this summer, just go to boycewatkins.com. All that information is there for the workbooks and the flashcards. Also, for yourselves, that training, How to Make Money Without Working's there. There's a list of AI stocks that I like that's there. And I'll put some other stuff up there very, very soon as well. So I just want to let you guys know, if you go to my website, there's stuff there that you can grab onto if you want to educate your family. I think that you have everything that you need to really take over the educational process. I think that we've seen and we've shown through all of Dr. Anderson's books that it's very, very dangerous to have the majority of black people educated by people who are not black. It has not worked out for us. Because it's not due to a lack of talent that we're struggling. It's really a lack of it's just being distracted. It's like somebody taking our most powerful assets and either muting them or pointing the gun in the wrong direction. And so next thing you shot yourself because somebody took the gun and pointed it right back at you or pointed at your grandma. And so we have to maintain control of that. I think that's very important. All right, so number 6. Wait, hold on. Wait, let me back up. It wasn't action step number 5. He says, so Dr. Anderson on page 237 in powernomics.com, that's his website. He says, black churches could serve as community centers for health services, employment opportunities, leadership and business training, etc. He says, it would be helpful if black churches would teach to enlighten rather than just to preach or excite. We talked about that. He said, churches could develop educational programs to educate black youth and adults. We talked about that. Once these principles are taught in the nursery schools, so he's talking about teaching these ideas early, putting your own people first. He says they should see those principles in operation in church activities. So they should see the church sort of applying the things that they're teaching. Teaching these values to black children is not teaching them to dislike any other group. I think that's important to point out. You don't have to hate anybody in order to do this. He says the issue is who black people are for and who they are, and not who they are against. So it's really, again, if anybody gives you that whole spiel about how talking like this is racist or whatever, all you got to do is say, this is about who I'm for. This has nothing to do with who I'm against. So ultimately, Dr. Anderson is not advocating for any kind of hateful philosophy. He's not advocating that you should just be mad at white people for being white. He's actually just basically saying, look, you got to love yourself, right? And you got to love your children. And you have to make sure that, more importantly than teaching them what to do or how to do it, you got to teach them who to do it for, where to apply what they're actually good at, right? So here, Dr. Anderson also says, once these principles are taught in the nursery schools, they should follow through in high schools, independent and religious school policies, or special trade or apprentice programs that complement the regular public schools. A supportive group spirit of unity must be instilled in black children in their early years. As they grow, They'll know how to respect themselves and each other and how to stay in their communities to seek out Black businesses for goods and services. That's another thing. Even supporting Black and buying Black has to be very conscious. You have to sort of understand the power of your money and not spend in an unconscious fashion. Most spending, the psychology of spending, the psychology of consumerism is driven by tapping into your unconscious mind. Again, my wife, that's all she studies is the unconscious mind. So one of the things that corporations do when they want to distract you and get your money is they try to get you to unconsciously do things, get you to not think about it. Right? So this is why it's important for us to think. This is why the anti-intellectual culture is so dangerous, because it discourages people from thinking. It makes people that are thinkers look like oddballs and weirdos, and people make fun of that, but it's the person who thinks that can overcome their unconscious programming. So let me keep going. So it says religious or church charter schools could offer Black children intensive specialized training that would support community building or vertical integration in economics or politics. They could offer courses of study such as environmental sciences, business and industrial management, community-based wealth building and productivity, personal investing, saving, marine services, computer sciences, and bionics. At another level, churches should also focus on educating and instructing adults in the skills they need for building and supporting powernomics communities. Churches could help parents and other adults learn how to be self-sufficient and competitive by building Black communities, practicing ethno-aggregation and vertical integration, and commercializing Black culture through business development and inculcating a code of conduct. So a lot of these things, when he's talking about codes of conduct and all this stuff, again, this is stuff, even street gangs understand this. The Crips and the Bloods understand this. Codes of conduct, codes of behavior, a unified framework, understanding the assignment, understanding what your values are, what matters. The mafia, they teach people things like, like once you commit to the family has to be your top priority. They tell you what your priorities are. What is it? The family, your family, and then God or something. I forgot what they say. God, family, and I don't remember, but it's something like that, right? And this is true for any sort of gang affiliated scenario, which would be any group that's trying to achieve the same goal has to understand what the assignment is, whether you're talking about military or you're talking about a corporation. In a corporation, they tell you these are our core values. Most businesses that get started, a fraternity, any group that wants to remain unified has to start by listing their core values. So I ask you, what are your core values? Well, I'll tell you what the core values are in the Black Business School. In the Black Business School, our Black core of three, the first thing we came up with when we first got started, where we want to educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black-owned businesses. Those were our three core values, and everything else builds off of that. So he says also here, Dr. Anderson says on page 239 of Powernomics, he says many Black churches are in such cities as Washington, D.C., New York, Detroit, and L.A., are well into developing church-owned Black business projects. The most frequent projects are the ones that provide social services such as nursery schools, nursing homes, senior citizens' homes, low-income housing, florist shops, and food service programs for seniors. They have made a start. Others have progressed a little further and have begun to invest in more substantial business projects. They are beginning to build commercial office space for professional services and retail outlets. One church in Michigan invested its money in a potato chip plant, a meat processing factory, and cookie companies. Profits from the operation of these businesses flow into the church's coffers and enabled the church to purchase additional land, upon which they built a chartered school for the local Black community. So what Dr. Claude Anderson is saying in his book, Powernomics, which again, his website is powernomics.com, is he's challenging churches to be a little more sophisticated. These models that he's talking about, they may sound complex and extraordinary, but they're really not. You're already doing this. You already have this in the Black community. It's not controlled by you, but it already exists. Has anybody ever seen how elaborate the systems are to get Black boys into football camps? Has anybody seen how they have a nationwide distribution network to literally recruit every Black child in every neighborhood across America, especially in places like Texas, who might have extraordinary athletic ability? Has anybody ever seen that? And how intense the process is? where you have 9-year-old kids that they have all the equipment. They wear the gloves the wide receivers wear. They maybe do the summertime 2-a-day practices that are super intense in the 100-degree heat. They understand how to run offensive schemes. I want you to really think about that. And then I want you to imagine what would happen if we did that with business. Like, imagine if we just had training camps for millions of kids all across this country where we were just drilling them at a high level all across this country to be experts at business and investing. Give me a yes if you see what I'm saying. Like, imagine that. Imagine if we just, every 4-year-old, the expectation is at some point you're going to go to business camp. We're in money camp, and you're going to learn how to invest. You're going to learn how to acquire real estate. You're going to learn how to run a business, how to delegate, how to run a team, how to set up an operation, how to develop processes, how to organize, how to come together economically. You're going to understand cooperative economics at a very high level. You see, you got to understand this is where I get passionate. This is where I start acting like the preachers, and I start jumping up and down, to be honest with you, because this is my vision. This is what I see. This is what I know we can do. When I wrote the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I designed it specifically as 10 rules to say, let's think about this. Imagine if this was just a basic structure. Everybody memorize this. Memorize this. I set up acronyms, things like the COST model, contribute, own, save, invest, target. What else? Telling kids, to keep their poise. Producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. So ultimately, a lot of this, this stuff, I think, if approached in the right way, could literally put our kids in a position. The KID model. Thank you, Mr. Jan Jasmine. There's a lot. There's so much stuff that we put together. And the thing is that this is kind of the way I think you want to approach this. Sturdy. That's another one. Sturdy kids. Systems, technology, entrepreneurship, relationships, delegation. Basically, if you approach it this way, then you're gonna be far more likely to be successful. And one of the and this was what I was really hoping. I really wish I could have. I'm gonna raise the money. We're gonna raise money over time, and we're gonna get as much done as we can. But when I was talking on the phone with some of these rappers and stuff, they have money and they spend money on stupid stuff. I try to just lay this vision out, and I don't think I'm good enough at explaining it because I can see it, and I don't know if I can draw it clearly enough to get the right people to really understand how this investment could be a game changer for the Black community and also be done in a profitable way. But this is what I want to do. Like, I really want to establish Powernomics centers all across the United States. Maybe, and we wouldn't need a bunch, maybe just 50 of them. If we have 50 Powernomics centers that were just like football training camps, and we just said, okay, every Black child, we want to send every Black child through this training, and we're going to push them hard, but not too hard. But we're going to push them on basic fundamentals so that they're going to get a head start on everybody else. And we're going to mass produce economic geniuses, the same way you mass produce Teslas on the assembly line, or you mass produce you mass produce anything that you want to see. In war, you have to mass produce battleships. You got to mass produce airplanes. You have to mass produce bullets. I want to mass produce economic geniuses. I want to fight systematic racism with systematic Black excellence. Black excellence is beautiful when one great Black person does something amazing. But imagine what Black excellence will look like when it's structured in a systematic way, where instead of having one Serena Williams, you have 100,000 of them, or instead of having one LeBron James level thinker, and entrepreneurially speaking, you have 2 million of them. Right? That's what I want to see. I want to build an army. And I think that's something. I think that kind of military talk. I get it from my father. He's a soldier. A lot of military people I know follow me or follow this platform because I think you guys get it, because you understand the assignment and y'all not scared. And that's why I honor you so much, because I think that there's something special about people that have that kind of courage to serve the country. And I think that spending time sort of whining about our condition is obviously just a miserable way to waste your life. I personally think, though, that we have the solution right in front of us. God gave us the answer. The answer's right there. We just got to go do it. And so if you want to know what I'm going to be working on and what I'm raising money for and the little things I'm trying to accomplish, and why I was even interested in really having conversations with people like Kanye and stuff. I couldn't get them to see the vision, but I was sitting there thinking, gosh, we could probably do this with just $10 million. It wouldn't even take a lot of money, and I don't want any money for this. I would not want any compensation at all. And I think any artist, athlete, anybody that really wants to make a difference for the community, get with some smart people and develop something systematic that's almost militarized in terms of the way it's deployed, and then also deploy a lot of money marketing the importance of every child going through this, every child going through the system, every child going through this process. That is going to make such a huge difference in Black economics. You cannot even imagine. And also, a lot of this comes not just from me studying finance through the years and being a finance professor, because I've seen this play out, but also I study war a lot. I watched a documentary about World War II like I literally watched it probably 8 times. It was 12 hours. I watched it 8 times. I don't know why war was so fascinating to me. Maybe I was, in a war in a previous life or something, or maybe as a Black man, I've always felt like I was in war. It could be my trauma, or maybe it's my father's experience in Vietnam that made me interested in this kind of thing. Because I have so much admiration and respect for young people, especially we talk about an 18, 19-year-old kid who goes out in the middle of the Atlantic and they're on this battleship and the U-boats are coming through about to sink them in the middle of the night. I mean, that's got to be the scariest thing in the world. So I respect these soldiers. But anyway, one of the things I studied was, I said, war is fascinating to me, because basically you have this situation where people have things that they want to do or that they have to do. And if you don't succeed, you're going to die, right? The fact that you're literally, you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out how to develop radar so you can track the German, the Luftwaffe, the airplanes coming across, the sea that are going to attack England. And you know that if you don't figure this out, that a lot of your relatives are going to get killed because they're not going to be able to track the planes. That is a lot of pressure, right? And what I figured out from war is that I think the U.S. won World War II because they have a massive amount of industrial capacity. They can mass produce things at a level that nobody else can. The Germans couldn't mass produce the way we could. They had higher quality. We had just more quantity, right? So I think that Black people, we have quality, right? Black excellence shows up, and it's beautiful to watch. We'll have one person who does something really amazing. But then I think the next step of that is to say, how do you mass produce excellence at that level? If you have that one guy or that one genius that does something extraordinary, why isn't that mass produced? Like, the part of the reason that I spent 12 years, 14 years developing this platform by myself with my own money, I didn't get any help, from any corporations or government, none of that stuff. I spent time developing this platform because I said, yeah, I worked really hard to learn all these things that I learned, but I want to mass produce myself. I want 10 million Boyce Watkinses to exist in the next generation. I want the stuff that I know to just be common knowledge throughout the entire Black community. I want an army. I don't want to be a one-man army. I want to be an army with 1 million people in it, right? So ultimately, and this is important. This is the key. This is the key. This is how you're going to defeat systematic racism, because the way the white man got you pinned down is he's got a whole system designed to oppress you. So if he used a whole system to oppress you, then you got to use a system to overcome the oppression. You cannot overcome the oppression with the whole super Negro theory, which is where we got one Superman, one really smart Black person that's just this great leader, and we all bow to this person. No, you can't do that. It's like trying to win a football game with one great player. There's no one player ever in history that could defeat an entire football team. The greatest football players in history, if you take Deion Sanders, was the greatest ever at his position. He was a bad boy. I loved watching Deion play when he played for my Cowboys because he was the best player ever in the history of his position. But Deion Sanders by himself could not have even defeated a middle school football team by himself. Right? So my point is to say that you have to have some ability to industrialize what you're doing. You have to think systematically. These are things that can be taught. These are things that can be, every successful Black person should be trying to multiply themselves. They should be trying to multiply their success. But again, it requires a set of skills that you don't get in school. You don't get these skills in school. You get employee skills in school. But you could get skills. You can read books about how to delegate tasks to other people, how to develop systems and processes so that you can document the system so that other people can learn it. One of the reasons, I'm going to finish with this point, then I'm going to be done with this. You hear all the conversation about how AI is going to become super smart and kill us all one day. Has anybody been watching us where all the people are warning what artificial intelligence is going to do? And give me a yes if you've been following these conversations. So there's a guy from Google who used to work from Google who's considered the godfather of AI, and he's literally just warning us like this is gonna be bad. Like y'all better control this while you can, because once it hits a certain point, it's gonna go beyond us, and we won't be able to stop it. It's gonna end badly for human beings, right? Well, when they asked him, they said, "What is it that makes artificial intelligence so dangerous? Why should we be so worried about it?" And he said, literally, and this relates to what I was saying before. He said, if I became really good at astrophysics, I could show you, I could explain to you how to be good at astrophysics, but it would take years and years and years of really rigorous training for me to get you to the level where you understand it as well as I do. He said, with AI, it's not like that. AI can figure something out and instantly deploy that knowledge systematically to a million other AI systems around the globe, and they're all equally smart at the same time, instantaneously. Systematic. It's the systematic effect of all these AI robots operating with the same brain, all on code that is that makes them the scariest threat that human beings have ever faced throughout the history of our existence on this planet. So what I'm saying to you is that as Black people, if you want to understand the key to power and knowledge, it is operating in a systematic fashion. You got to get gang affiliated. You got to come after that part of the culture that breaks you down, leaves you divided, keeps you from being able to work together, and find your group and get on the same page. And then execute your training at a high level and on a systematic basis, and your kids are your best teammates ever. They're super loyal to you. That's a great place to start. So, if you want to know what I was thinking when I wrote that book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, that's what I was thinking. That's it. I'm done. I have nothing else to say today. My wife made salmon, so I'm going to go enjoy her fish. All right. So God bless you, everybody. It's so good to see you. And we will be back next week. If you're not yet in the free book club and you get access to the free life class and everything, just go to blackkeystogreatness.com. That's blackkeystogreatness.com. Also at boycewatkins.com, there's free stuff there. The $5 a day investing plan is there. The book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, is there. There's a training, How to Make Money Without Working, that's there. Financial flashcards and workbooks for your kids, that's there. Whatever you want to look at, it's all there. My travel schedule's there. I'm going to be in Seattle July 8th, Brooklyn early August. We gotta nail that stuff down. I'll give you the details. The All Black National Convention, that's solid. That's going to be October 20th in Atlanta. So that information is also on my website, boycewatkins.com. So thank you so much for listening, guys. It was great to see you. God bless you. Have a good night. And I'll see you all really soon, next week, actually, for book club. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.